Koi CBD has been a leader in the hemp wellness space since their start in 2015. The company is family-owned and community-focused. They have an expansive product range, including broad and full-spectrum CBD products and more, in tinctures, gummies, vapes, topicals, and even CBD for pets. All of their products are third-party tested by accredited laboratories to ensure potency and purity, and lab results are posted online for consumers to access. They have over 11,000 positive reviews posted on their website. Koi products are offered at thousands of retail locations nationwide. They offer discount programs through their website for veterans, as well as a Koi Rewards loyalty program to earn discounts and a subscribe and save service. So go to koicbd.com, that's KOICBD.com, and enter discount code NOWELL, NOWELL, for 20% off a single order through the end of January 2022. Thank you so much for your support.
Yo, what's up? This is Sean the Shaman, and you're tuned into the Bradley's House Podcast.
Nothing is impossible, but certain things are highly improbable. Don't think I'll meet your kind again, not in this lifetime.
Hey guys, Happy New Year, Happy 2022, and welcome back to Bradley's House, the podcast. I am your co-host, Jarett Orr. She is the executive director of the Noel Family Foundation, and our host, Ms. Kellie Noel. Kellie, how you doing today?
I'm doing so good, Jarett, and for several reasons. First of all, it's a new year, always exciting, very hopeful. Good things are going to happen. I can feel it this year. It's going to be a good year. But mostly because in the long history of our podcast, we've been doing this just over a year, and only time I've been this nervous was our very first episode, because it was not only our first episode, but it was my dad. Someone super close and personal, and I just wanted it to go really well. But ever since we started the podcast, I've been wanting to have this person on as a guest, and she's super wonderful and special to me, and I think this is the second most nervous I've been for any episode, even with those, like, my favorite artists that we talked to that I fangirled out. I was super nervous with that, but in a totally different way. So I'm excited. I'm excited for today's episode.
Well, I'm excited as well. Now, for those of you that are checking out the podcast, make sure you are following the Noel Family Foundation on social media, following the website, because there's a lot of cool things that constantly are going on. And one of the things that we did earlier, or I guess later in 2021, was the auction to benefit the Noel Family Foundation. And that is kind of how this whole episode began. Kellie, who is our guest today?
Today, I am so happy to have the clinical director of New Method Wellness, which is an extremely well-respected substance abuse treatment center in Southern California. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's been featured on several episodes of The Dr. Phil Show as a mental health expert. She's a frequent contributor to media outlets such as NBC News, MSN, Elle Magazine, and Glamour. She is in recovery. She has not only treated some of my family and close friends, but she's also been my therapist for over 2 years. She's a wife and a mother and a truly beautiful human being inside and out. Please welcome Dr. DeAnna Crosby to the show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know what to say to that. What a beautiful entry. I hope I can live up to that. That was just like the sweetest thing I've ever heard.
Damn, Kellie, you just
Right?
came with it.
Talk about closing, huh, Jarett?
Yeah.
That was big. That was strong right there. That's been the best introduction, I think, so far.
Yeah, by far. But she makes it easy. It's super easy when there's like so much information, there's so much that she's done, and she's really a truly incredible person. And I'm going to try not to say that through the entire interview, because then people are going to start rolling their eyes. But she's one of my most favorite people on the entire planet. And I'm super happy to have you with us today, DeAnna.
Back at you, girl. I always tell Kellie that if she wasn't my patient, I would force her to be my best friend. Because there are like few people on the planet that I can sit there and tell, like, I forget we're in session. We're just like, blah, 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 just telling you. She's just such an amazing person to be around. And I just love you to death, Kelly. And I really appreciate
Thank you.
the show.
I absolutely second that. And
Thank you.
she's not my patient, and I did totally jam myself down her throat. I was just like, we're gonna do this fucking podcast and be friends, and and here we are. So I totally get that.
It worked out. It worked out. Well, one thing that I always am grateful for with the podcast and with the Bradley's House Facebook group, and even when people come up to us at an event, is that people are so open and honest about their struggles. And I think that that's huge, because the more we can be open about just normal human struggles, the more we can destigmatize addiction and mental health and all these things, and the more people can be helped. So that was one reason why, and I know I talked with you about this before, DeAnna, that I wanted to let people know, you're my therapist. I've been in therapy. I think everybody should be in therapy. In fact, we joke all the time, right? Instead of people having college funds for their kids, they should have therapy funds.
That's what I told you. One of my mentors told me that people should have a jar when their baby's born and just put therapy on it. Every day put a few bucks in there. And then
Exactly.
when they 15, send them off to therapy, because I don't know if everybody needs it, but it's so good for people. I mean, I've seen so many people get so much success out of therapy.
Absolutely. It really is helpful. So I wanted to start by talking about addiction. Obviously, you're the clinical director of New Method Wellness, and you are in recovery. So you have, how many years do you have now?
I've been sober for 32 years.
That is remarkable.
I got sober when I was 6.
I was going to say, because you're only 33.
Wow.
So, I love when people don't get that.
It takes them a minute. Do the math.
I had to take my shoes off to do the math, but I got it now.
So I think a lot of people who are not in recovery confuse substance use with substance abuse.
Absolutely.
What are some signs of the difference of those?
Well, it was interesting because we were just talking before the show started about, I went on this show and everybody was wanting to know if I thought they were an alcoholic. I was like, I don't know if you're an alcoholic. I just got here. Do you think you're an alcoholic? One of the guys, this host of the show, he had a bottle of Jim Beam on his desk. And he was like, well, the reason I have this bottle, and he's getting really like defensive. And I was like, I don't even care. I'm just here to, be a guest. And so I think, or sometimes I'll go on vacation with people and they'll say, we'll just be standing there. And they'll go, so do you think I drink too much? And I'm like, I have not. You're on vacation. I have no idea what you're doing. I mean, yeah. So for me, I think the difference is I do think that I know there are people in recovery that think like nobody should use substances at all. And I'm not one of those people. A really good friend and client of mine says that drugs aren't bad. I just can't do them.
Mm.
So I'm kind of that thought, like, I don't think drugs and alcohol are bad. I think they should all be legalized, but I do think that they're not for me. I don't have a switch in my brain that says that's enough. So I just will keep going and going and going and going and going. And then, I've always had a really addictive personality, starting out with like sugar and relationships and all kinds of stuff. Like if there's a possibility to be addicted to it, I will be addicted to it. Luckily, I have this really patient husband, because I'm always like, do you love me? Do you think I'm pretty? Is everything okay? We've been married like 17 years, and he's like, yes, you're pretty. I love you. Okay. Because I'm just such a attention addict.
No clue what that's like.
Are you being serious, Jarett?
No, Anna's very much the same way. She's a beautiful soul, and I love to remind her of it constantly. And if I don't, she says, "Is there something wrong?"
Yeah. What are you thinking? Are you mad at me right now?
I don't know. I was thinking, how come sometimes I like mustard on a hot dog, but other times I like ketchup, but I never like them both together. That's what I was thinking.
My husband always goes, babe, I'm not as complicated as you think I am. I'm literally thinking nothing. What were you thinking? Like the other day I said, I feel like we were driving in the car for no reason. And I said, I feel like you could fall out of love with me really easily. And he goes, I don't even know what you're talking about.
He is so patient.
So I will say this, Kelly. I haven't brought this up because it didn't seem fair on the level of a lot of the things that we go through and we talk about here. But you bring up addiction, and for the last month now, I have genuinely been trying to stop drinking energy drinks. Right?
Oh yeah, those are super addictive, right?
It has become my addiction, to the point where, so I said, I got to get off these things. They can't be good for me. I'm done. And the first day that I didn't have any, I never felt like shit so bad in my life, to the point that I got in the car and drove to 7-Eleven as fast as I could and got to the freezer, opened it, and actually cracked it and started drinking it as I was walking to the counter. And this was all I didn't realize I was doing this, but I just knew that if I didn't get this energy drink into my body immediately, my head is pounding. I've got this caffeine headache. I feel sluggish. I need to get this thing into me as fast as possible. And it was at that moment that I was like, holy shit, this is, and I mean, again, I don't want to, by no means do I want to compare that to anybody that's been through any kind of struggles with drugs or alcohol, but here I am completely dependent on something. Mm-hmm. And now I find myself in 7-Eleven cannonballing this can before I even I paid for an empty can at the register. And I was, I thought to myself, I see what addiction is like to a degree now, because these were chemicals that I had to have in my body. And it was just, so I've been clean for a few weeks now. I switched to coffee and
Jarett.
But it was legitimate, it was a problem for me. And I guess I never could relate because I never had anything like that before. But I literally found myself walking around the house in the morning being like, all right, it's 11:30. You're not getting one. You usually already have one by now. So you're not getting it. It's not going down. You had the coffee. The coffee's fine. You don't need it. But I went through misery with that. So
about once a year, I try to stop eating all recreational sugar. The recreational sugar is the donuts, ice cream, blah, 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 all the good stuff. And it takes about 4 days for me to stop feeling horrible. Literally dragging and kicking and just hating life.
So obviously that leads perfectly into the signs of addiction, signs of substance abuse. If somebody has a question about it, am I addicted? Am I not addicted? What are good signs besides the obvious?
Some of the good signs are, kind of what Jarett was saying brings up the difference between, the definition of addiction to me is when I stop having something and the only relief I can get is to have it again. I can stop exercising and I don't need the exercise relief.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But when I stop eating sugar once a year, I am miserable. I just I don't know what it is. And when I stopped doing drugs and when I stopped drinking, when I stopped all that stuff, my life was really a challenge. I think that I detoxed for probably a year or two.
Wow.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to get that stuff out. Yeah.
It really does. And I hate to tell my clients this, but they say, how long am I going to detox? And I'm like, oh, different people have different times. But really, I want to say up to 2 years, especially people detox from opiates for up to 2 years.
Wow.
And I think that was me. I think I was detoxing from opiates for up to 2 years.
That's brutal.
Yeah, it's hard.
Other than stopping and realizing that you can't function unless you start again, are there other things?
Obviously, if you start putting your using, we say drugs and alcohol, but really we should just say drugs because alcohol is a drug.
Right.
But if you start putting your using before important things in your life, know that you're addicted. There's I think Alcoholics Anonymous has a 40 questions and it asks you have you ever lost a job? And you have to really be honest with yourself, because I've showed people that questionnaire and they've said, no, I've never lost a job. And I go, come on, let's really think about it. Let's, or have you lost a relationship because of your drug and alcohol use? Or have you, this or that, different things. So there's a really good 40 question thing for Alcoholics Anonymous. You can go online and Google it, and you can just answer it and see, how it fits in your life.
Do you think sometimes, too, the very fact that someone's asking means that they might already think they have a problem?
Yes, I think they might think they have one. I don't necessarily think it means they have one. I mean, I have clients who come to me and say, I'm an alcoholic. And so I sit down and look at their history, and we look at, their behaviors and their biology and, their genetics. And then all of a sudden I go, wait, you only started drinking when your wife died. And they go, yeah, I started drinking when my wife died. And I go, so you've been drinking heavily since your wife died, but you never drank before. And they said, no. I said, and you've stopped for the last 8 months. And they say, yeah. I go, that doesn't look like alcoholism to me. That looks like a situational problem where you just didn't have any other way to get relief. And that brings up a really good point too, is I ask my clients who do drink socially to not do it if they're feeling bad. That becomes a coping mechanism. Like if I'm feeling bad, I want to drink. But if I start doing it every time I feel bad, then now I'm just using it as a coping mechanism. I say, if you're going to use alcohol socially, use it socially. Go out and do it socially. Have a friend over, have a glass of wine, that kind of stuff. But don't sit and do it every time you feel sad or scared or lonely, because that will be your answer to your problems.
That's a good point. And that also brings me to my next question, which is the importance of addressing mental health in recovery, because I don't think addiction occurs in a vacuum. Our clinic at New Method Wellness, we treat dual diagnosis, which means you have a mental health issue and you have a substance abuse issue, which I believe that people who are addicted, probably 80% of them have a mental health issue. And when I ask people in their intake, do you have any mental health issues? They say no. And I say, well, have you ever had anxiety? And they go, yeah, I've always had anxiety. And I said, have you ever had depression? They said, yeah, I've always had depression. And I said, well, that's mental health. That's a health issue. Anxiety or depression is a mental health issue. So I do believe many, many addicts are self-medicating their depression and anxiety. And usually it happens around like puberty age. I think the combination of the hormones and the life experience, it's such a challenging time. But most people, I say, can you remember when you were first depressed? Can you remember when you were first anxious? I'd say 90% of them say 12, 13, middle school. And so it's usually around puberty. I've always wanted to do a study on puberty and the onset of addiction. Yeah, that's actually a really good one.
I would probably do that if I weren't so lazy.
You were not lazy. Oh my gosh. Did you hear that intro?
I picked up a major addiction as a teenage boy, but it wasn't substance abuse, I can assure you. But I took more showers between 13 and 16 than I have probably my entire life combined.
Would you say it was an addiction, or would you say it was like appropriate teenage red-blooded American thing?
Well, little column A, little column B.
Because I think that's pretty common for that age.
Yeah.
No, it is. That's but so I know, but so
it would be like they were doing that and like dropping out of school to do it, or not ever speaking to people to do it. You know what I mean? Or doing it until they were in pain or things like that. I mean, kids that do it 10, 20 times a day, it doesn't mean they're addicted. That's their age.
Is there a difference between somebody who has the disease, the addiction disease, and somebody who is just, taking their partying a little too far?
Absolutely. My husband always says he drank like a fish in college, which I still think is kind of wimpy. But like I'll say to him, he'll say, babe, I drank like a fish in college. I just quit. I don't know why you didn't quit. And I'm like, really? Did you ever lose a job? And he goes, well, no, of course not. And I go, well, did you ever drop out of college? And he goes, well, of course not. I said, did you ever fake your graduation? He goes, well, of course not. And I go, yeah, you didn't drink like a fish. You drank like a guppy.
All right, so let's just pump the brakes right there. Did you say fake your graduation?
Yes, from college.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, so I went to college for 3 years and 3 quarters. in my last quarter, I met this person and this guy, of course, and he said, he dropped out of college when he only had 1 quarter left to go. And I thought I could do that because that sounded like such a great idea. So then I met somebody else and he said, let's go to the Bahamas. And so I took the money from my college fund and went to the Bahamas with this guy. And my parents showed up at my college graduation. And my dad was a teacher for 38 years and he only missed 2 days of work. And one was to show up for my college graduation that I wasn't at. And
my
family
gosh.
was there, everybody was there. And 2 was to take me to rehab.
Wow. So did they show up and you weren't there? And then did you pretend that you had been or what?
I said, you missed it. You just didn't see me. So when I really truly graduated from college, I printed a copy of my diploma and then I wrote notes on the back of it and sent it to all the people that I lied to that I graduated from college when I really didn't.
Whoa. That's hardcore.
Oh, that's like nothing. We can talk all day about the stuff that this disease will get me to do. I mean, I am definitely one of those people that, people say to me, well, you were so young when you got sober, 6. And if you were, maybe you could drink now, you know what I mean? Maybe it wasn't that big of a deal. And I always say, yeah, but why would I take that chance? I mean, so let's say I'm not an alcoholic. I was just super young and I was partying my brains out. And now I could drink. Would it really be worth throwing the potential to throw my entire life away and everything I built and my career and my company and my family and my husband and my friends and my clients? I mean,
I feel like you went 32 years without it. I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to continue to push on.
I hope so. I always have a healthy fear of it, because when people come to me and they say, I got this, I don't even want to drink anymore, it scares me. Because I go, you should have a healthy fear of this. It's a very dangerous disease. People die over it all the time. And I think that healthy fear is what's kept me sober for 32 years.
Keeps you from being overconfident, huh?
Yes. I think overconfidence is a big relapse trigger.
So you're in recovery.
Is.
I am not. Is there and this is a question that I've been wanting to ask for a while because I truly and genuinely wonder, is there a proper etiquette for being in a social situation? Like, if I want to have a drink, is that rude if we're at dinner?
No, but it's not rude at all. Like, I think of it like this. If I were allergic to peaches and I came over your house and you were like, DeAnna, I'm serving peach pie, I wouldn't be like, nobody can have peach pie. I'm allergic. Get it out of the house. I would just be like, okay, well, do you have any ice cream? Because I don't eat peach pie. But,
yeah, that makes sense. But I don't want to be the person that's like rubbing. I don't know. It's awkward for me because I feel like I can't act the way that I would normally act because I don't want to, because I don't want to do something that could set off my friend or person that I'm in the social setting with.
I think that's worse. I think you being awkward and not just having a drink would make me more uncomfortable than you being like, I'm not going to drink tonight because you're not drinking and make an issue of it. If you, like, my husband drinks, not very much. He's, like I said, he's kind of wimpy, but him and his friends will go out, and they'll all have a beer. I've never had a beer in my life. So I don't understand it, but it doesn't bother me at all. But I think if they weren't drinking because I was there and they weren't enjoying themselves, that would make me feel awkward. But you know what else I wanted to say, Jarett? I think that it's super respectful and nice to ask. Like, people have said to me a million times, do you mind if I have a drink? And I'm like, absolutely not. Please don't pull out any cocaine or heroin. But if you want to have a drink, I'm totally okay with that.
You know your limits.
I know my limits. I always say I feel bad for people that alcohol is their drug of choice. I mean, can you imagine if, like, you were at the grocery store and you had to walk down the heroin aisle? I would be like, I need to leave the grocery store. Or if you were like at a dinner party and they were passing around a tray of cocaine, I would be like, I can't stay at this dinner party. So I think people that alcohol is their drug of choice have it especially difficult because it's so widely accepted in our culture.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you mentioned a genetic component to addiction.
Yes, and that's highly controversial, by the way.
Is it really?
Everybody used to believe that there's genetics to it, but now some really famous people that I have a lot of respect for who've done a ton of research, especially Dr. Gabor Mate. He is probably my favorite researcher and like the person right now to go to. He's going to be in the history books for studying addiction. He's amazing. He wrote a book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And what that means is the Buddhists call addiction the hungry ghost. Isn't that a great analogy? I mean, you think about like, hungry ghost inside of you. That's addiction. So he wrote this beautiful, like really entertaining, phenomenal, well-written, well-researched book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. He doesn't believe it's genetic. And like everything else he says, I think is biblical. He's amazing. But I do still see a genetic component. It's just if you sit down and do a genogram with somebody and look at their family history, there are so few people that don't have it in their family. So few addicts. And I've been doing this for about 23 years. So I've seen a lot of genograms where people come and they write down like what happened in their family and their grandparents' family and backward, and like 9 times out of 10, there's a huge history of either alcohol abuse, food abuse, drug abuse, sex abuse, gambling. It's all kind of the same thing,
Yeah.
But obviously you have the people that'll argue that you're just a product of your environment as well.
Well, I agree with that too, but I have seen people that like brother and sister grew up in the exact same house, or twins grew up in the exact same house, and one is a complete addict and one is not.
Yeah, I that makes sense. I remember when I was about 16 or 17, I was, starting to hang out with my friends a little later at night, and my dad pulled me aside and said, listen, I know you're a kid, but you have to be aware of the fact that on your mother's side of the family, you have this gene. My mom was an addict. She was in recovery before she passed away from cancer. So, she was able to, but it runs strong in that side of the family. And when he said that, that really kind of sunk into me. And oddly enough, like 3 hours later, I'm on the phone with my mom. And she's talking to me about what my plans are for the night. And I told her that a bunch of guys from work were having a card game and I was going to go play poker. And she says, now listen, that's fine, but I want you to be careful because gambling runs in your father's side of the family. And it's something. And I remember hanging up the phone and being like, man, am I fucked? Like, luckily I was able to avoid both. So I don't know how it works out, but I do definitely agree that there has to be some sort of gene or some sort of genetic thing
that will point out certain genes that they believe is a genetic predisposition. Like I said, Mate doesn't believe in it, and I believe everything else he says, but this part I think is missing. I think it's a combination of genetics and environment, both.
Mm-hmm. What role do you think trauma plays in addiction?
Oh my gosh, trauma is just, I'd say trauma is like 80%.
Wow.
I'd say 10% is genetic, 10% is environment, 80% is trauma.
Wow, that's heavy.
It's really true because, some people never get a chance to deal with, and I mean, I feel like, you know me, Kelly, I love my job. It's just, probably too much. I love my job. But I see people all the time and they say, this is the first time I've ever told anyone this. And I feel so honored and privileged that they're willing to tell it to me. But in the same sentence, it's terrifying to me and so sad that they've spent all these years never talking about it. And just every time it starts to come up a little bit, just pouring some alcohol on it or some drugs or some gambling or some sex or some,
yeah,
shopping. Or, what else I think is such a huge addiction right now that not many people are looking at is our phones.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I see people and like, I have friends that at a dinner party will not get off their phone or staring at it the entire time. And then I also witness people we'll all be sitting around and like jonesing to check their phone.
Needing a fix.
Yeah, and then they finally look at it when there's a break or somebody walks to the bathroom or something, and then everybody gets it and looks at it, and it's like that feeling that Jarett was talking about, getting the energy drink.
Yeah. So clearly, when someone's facing their addiction and working toward their recovery, they really need to then be focused on whole mind, body, and spirit, right? Like, is it possible to have a successful recovery program without all of those elements?
Well, another one of my favorite writers is Robin Norwood, and she says it's easy. I mean, it's possible to be in recovery without a spiritual program. It's like walking uphill backwards in high heel.
Mm.
It's possible, but it's so much easier to turn around and take off your high heels.
Mm-hmm.
Like a religious program or a God program. I mean, any sort of spirituality, like meditating, hiking, getting in nature, those kind of spiritual things. I think those things are the ticket to, I think community and spirituality are the ticket to long-term sobriety.
Mm. I remember you told me one time that connection was the opposite of addiction. And the more I think about that, the more I think about addiction and recovery, and especially with the pandemic and how it has isolated so many people, it's so true. That sense of community, that connection is so important. And that's probably why, these 12-step programs are so essential as well, or some type of a program, because that does give you community.
And then the thing that I can appreciate about a 12-step program is that it does address body, mind, and spirit.
Right.
Like the whole program of it, the whole 12-step thing is going to address your body, your mind, and your spirit.
Yeah.
And
that's so key.
I've had people come in and say, my doctor told me that I wouldn't like AA because it's too religious. I'm always shocked because in my experience and my education, I never saw it as religious at all. And the people who are religious are of all different religions. So
yeah.
That was kind of surprising to me when people don't know that it's a very open program, and lots of atheists are in 12-step programs.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's more about spirituality than religion, about connecting to some sort of higher power, whether it's, nature or something inside of you or God or whatever. It's, God as you understand him to be.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people do get turned off by that because they think they know what they're going to encounter when it comes to that spiritual aspect in a 12-step program. But
the idea of like they were going, like, there's so much religious abuse in America today. And if somebody grew up with religious abuse and the shaming and the toxicity and, on and
it's triggering.
Yeah, they're not going to want to hear the word. And, they use the word God in 12-step, but they wrote that stuff in 1939. Yeah. They didn't have like go out in nature or go for a hike, or that wasn't really the way we thought about spirituality in 1939.
Yeah.
Might have been 19. I could be wrong on that.
But it was a while ago.
Yeah.
Definitely a while ago. Now, obviously, one of the other focuses of our podcast is on music. And a lot of times we talk about how the specific challenges of being in the entertainment industry and struggling with addiction or maintaining sobriety. And obviously that's a big reason for why we want to open Bradley's House, to have a place that specifically addresses that for people in the music industry. Can you touch a little bit on some of those unique struggles, and so that any musicians that are listening that maybe are struggling either with their addiction or are currently in recovery can get a little bit more understanding of why there's so much more for someone in the entertainment industry or someone who's very visible in the public?
Well, my husband comes from a very famous musical family.
Yes.
And there's a lot of addiction in his family. People have written books about it. And, it was a lot of trauma for him watching people be addicts in his family, which is why he's such a lightweight. But I think one of the biggest problems that he's going to kill me when he listens to it.
You've called him a wimp 2 or 3 times and now a lightweight.
Only about his drinking. Like I said to Jarett earlier, he could get in a bar fight. He'd be good. But
now I know you adore him.
I do adore him. But I think one of the main things is that, we what did you say again? I just lost it.
Oh, but how it's a unique challenge for people in the entertainment industry, people that are visible.
for sure. I think one of the biggest problems is that they move too fast. Like I have worked with different types of celebrities and people in the entertainment industry and professional athletes. And I go on the Dr. Phil show a lot and meet people. And I think the biggest problem is they go back too fast. Like in order to develop long-term sobriety, you got to have a foundation.
Right.
So I asked you to build a house. What would be the most important part of your house?
Definitely the foundation.
Right. So if you get sober and you're doing really well for 30 days and then you go back on tour, it's not a good idea.
No.
Around you all the time, you're going to be triggered. You're going to be the same people. I tell everybody, if you really want a shot at long-term sobriety, you should spend a whole year building a foundation. Because the people who I know who spent a whole year building a foundation, working on the body, mind, and spirit, and just, getting a get-well job, not really focusing on career right now, those are the people that made it through law school. Those are the people that made it through PhDs. Those are the people that made it through going back to work as in the entertainment industry, going back to work as musicians. They took a whole year off. And you think to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss so much in a year, but you're really not. Because what you're gaining is the rest of your life.
And taking control of your life too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I've definitely seen that played out in people that I know, excuse me, in people that I know. And it is hard. There's so many challenges in the music industry because of, the environment and the drugs and the alcohol and partying and all that kind of stuff. But as you said, it's hard to pull yourself out of that because you don't want to lose momentum in your career,
Right.
lose your audience. Yeah,
But what if
exactly.
you die? I mean,
Then you really have lost your career.
Yes, exactly. People I don't really like to look at how serious this disease is and how life-threatening and horrific, which I know that you're very aware of. I had a client's mom call me and said, I'm really worried about his eating. I was like, I don't give a fuck if he eats Cheetos all day, every day. He's not heroin.
Yeah.
Get our priorities straight.
Right. It's all relative.
I mean, seriously, he can work on his eating in a year. But right now, I just really want him to not shoot heroin. Can we just do that?
Let's focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah. But, I think for musicians, it's doubly hard. I think the musicians who I won't say I have a very good friend, two really good friends who are pretty popular musicians. And they're both in recovery for a long time. Like one is probably 32 years like me, and we all got sober together. And I guess the other one's around 32 years too. We all got sober together in the same area in Costa Mesa and hung out together and ran around as young, sober people. Well, they happened to make it really big, the music industry. And they took sober people with them on tour. They surrounded themselves with sober people. They had no partying on the bus. And they really made sure to put their sobriety first. I mean, you have to treat your sobriety like a brand new baby. You have to protect it, cherish it. And everyone thinks it'll be fine. I'll be fine. I don't even drink anymore. I'm good. I don't even do drugs anymore. It's not. If it was that simple, everybody would do it.
Right. And that's that overconfidence you were talking about too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we mentioned 12-step programs. What are some other tools that you think are helpful as a general rule in recovery?
Obviously I'm a big fan of therapy. I think that most people could change their lives with a year of therapy.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Without a lot of issues or whatever, they could just spend some time in therapy getting to know themselves and find out what they want out of life and really go after things that are important to them that they've been putting aside. So I think therapy, I'm a big believer in diet and exercise, especially for addicts, because we're just so, people say addicts are so overly sensitive. We are so overly sensitive. We're sensitive to everything. So if we're just eating crap and drinking crap and not exercising, and I'm not saying you have to be a workout fiend, just go for a walk. But if you're not moving your body in some form or another, eating some sort of healthy diet, I think it's really hard to like change your lifestyle. And, you know, one of the things that Rob Norwood says in her book is that nature doesn't like a vacuum. Nature doesn't like a vacuum. In the law of physics, nature doesn't like a vacuum. So in the real world, if I'm going to take all those drugs and alcohol away, what am I going to replace it with?
Right.
So if you replace it with going for a walk every day and eating one extra vegetable, you know, I always say start small. And then you can focus on that instead of the drugs and alcohol.
This is amazing advice. I'm playing this for my children. I'm going to get ahead of the game, and I'm going to be like, now, see, if you guys don't do the right things and you know, go down this road of addiction, you're going to have to fucking exercise and eat vegetables. So that's, you know,
Oh my gosh.
so I think this is good preventative maintenance as well. As much as you're saying people that are already in need to do that, I can use it as fair warning and be like, look, you guys play video games a lot and, you know, you don't like vegetables. This could be your future if you don't make the right choices now.
You know, my oldest son he's going to kill me too when he hears this. He was so addicted to video games that we had to put him in a room with a lock on the door, and he hacked that lock.
Wow.
12 years old. Well, first we put this machine on the video games that it would turn the video games on after 2 hours, turn them off. So he'd be playing and it would just shut down. So I walk into the video game room and he's playing for like 6 hours. And I go, how have you been in here all day? And he goes, Mom, we hacked that like the first week. It was so then we bought this lock for the door. Then they hacked that. So then we got the little code lock for the door. And they would sit around the corner and try and watch us put the code in. So now we had to change the code every 3 days because they were at an age where their full frontal lobe was not developed and they could not moderate themselves with video games. Now, I tell parents that all the time, and rarely do they listen, but children cannot moderate themselves with video games. Their full frontal lobe is not developed. They don't have the editing skills. So you have to moderate that. Change that lock every 3 days. Do whatever it takes.
Oh yeah, so I do, you know, it's Christmas break, so the kids are home, and I've got a 9-year-old and a soon-to-be 13-year-old, and I took them off the video games the other day, and I said, you know, let's do something else. You guys got a bunch of art kits and different things. Do something else. And they set up the stuff and they started kind of getting into it. And then the 13-year-old knocked the 9-year-old's picture off the table. He called him a fucking asshole. They began fist fighting in the middle of the kitchen. And I was like, please go play Fortnite. I give up. It's fine. You guys have the video games. I'll try again tomorrow, but you guys won today. And then they go back to their separate areas and they get on their video games and then they, you know, they do what they do.
Is that we use the screen for the babysitter. And I'm not saying I haven't done it. And I'm not saying, you know, that it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. You know, you put your kids in front of a screen and you've got a couple hours to get stuff done, to do what you want, relax, and you don't even have to think about it. But you really have to like proactively monitor their screen time. We did a thing where we said no video games between Monday and Thursday. They could play Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I think we had a 4-hour limit on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But they just would not do their homework if I let them play video games between Monday and Thursday. And it was suggested to me by another therapist, and I tried it, and it really helped a lot.
I was talking with someone the other day about video games, and the subject of Atari came up, which is the first video game that Brad and I had. And no joke, we could sit there and play Pong for 6 hours straight. Pong! Like the most basic, unimpressive game.
Can you imagine now?
No, that's crazy. I would never leave the room.
Acting with people all over the world. You know, there are children who have died in Korea because they didn't get up to eat or drink because they were playing video games. They died of malnourishment.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That could easily be one of my kids.
Mine too.
They are just fully addicted.
Yeah, they are so, like I said, they cannot moderate their full frontal lobes are not developed. They just can't do it. You have to do it for them. And it seems like, oh, they'll grow out of it. Oh, da 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 da. I remember we were at a party one time and they had one of those game trucks at the party. Have you seen those?
Oh yeah.
And all the kids were getting bored. They all were coming out and throwing a football and stuff. And I said, where's my son? And I went in, he was the only kid with the game truck people. There was 3 game truck guys and him playing video games and all the other running around.
That's awesome.
And I was like, oh shit, I got to do something.
Is it fair to say that that you can have an addiction that's not necessarily a problem? Like, I mean, it seems like, Jarett with his energy drinks, or, the majority of people in this country with coffee, that's an addiction for sure, that caffeine addiction. But as long as it's not getting in the way of your life or keeping you from living the way you want to live, it's still an addiction, but just not in the negative sense.
Right. And, people can be addicted to working out and they say, well, that's such a good thing. How can it? Well, there are people who work out through injuries. They'll get injured and they'll keep working out because they're so addicted they can't stop. That's when it becomes a problem. But because I have such an addictive personality, I choose to put addictive things in my life, like exercise, Netflix, things that are harmless,
Right. Our producer just messaged me. She said functional addiction.
Oh, interesting.
That's a good term. I like that.
Addictioning. Yeah, I guess because I functionally am addicted to coffee or caffeine.
Right.
I can make it through the day. I don't lose jobs or friendships or go to jail or have sex with people I don't know or things like that.
Or fake graduations.
Or fake graduations for coffee, but I'm addicted for sure. Same with sugar. I used to have a big sign in my office that said sugar is a drug. So many people gave me so much backlash about that. They did not want to think of their sugar intake as addictive.
Oh, touched a nerve there.
Yeah.
I probably also wouldn't have sex with a stranger for an energy drink, maybe.
You might. I think you might.
I think the jury's still out on that one, Jarett.
All right. I wouldn't make eye contact.
Kiss on the lips. How about that?
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't make eye contact, you're just completing a task.
Well, a lot of sex workers say you don't kiss on the lips because then it's not intimate.
Yeah, that's what Julia Roberts said in Pretty Woman.
Right.
That's where we all learned.
Right. You got to not kiss on the lips, Jarett. Just get the drink. Close your eyes.
Do what you got to do.
Just think of the laundry.
Right. Right. It's what I'm just saying. I said I probably wouldn't. Maybe. most of the time.
Mostly. Well, I think one of my favorite things about you, DeAnna, is that you are so transparent about your struggles and it just, for me, it makes you so relatable. And that's what I've always told you. I've over my lifetime, I've seen other therapists, but I've never felt like I could completely be open. But because you are so you just kind of lay it all out there, it allows other people to be the same. And I think that's really what I strive for in my work with the foundation and in this podcast and just, with people in general, is just being transparent, being honest and being open so that we can all realize that we're not all that different and that we all have struggles and we don't have to pretend, so that we can lift each other up that way and strengthen that sense of community. So I want to thank you for modeling that.
What a beautiful way to put it. I love your words, Kelly. You're so articulate.
Thank you.
My clients, I always say, I spend so much time with my clients that I say, if I'm not going to be vulnerable, why? If I'm not going to, why should you trust me if I don't trust you with my stuff?
Exactly.
So I'm always the first one to be vulnerable. I think it's a really good role modeling tool too. It's very controversial in psychology whether you should self-disclose anything about yourself. Old school psychologists, they don't self-disclose at all. They don't tell you anything about their lives. I think I told you about this therapist I was in therapy with for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And he never told me one thing about himself. And finally, like towards the end, I said, you never told me about yourself. And then he told me a story about how this bear ran out next to his car. And I was like, I don't really care about the bear in your car. I mean, have you ever slammed heroin?
Really not what you were looking for.
But it was funny that he really thought that was, I mean, he was so cool. But
You ever maybe jerked a guy off for a Red Bull?
right, that's what I wanted to hear, because that would have made me feel more comfortable to talk about my own past.
Yeah.
But no, he was like telling me about this bear ran up next to his car.
He might have had some intimacy problems, some vulnerability issues.
But the people who I respect the most are very disclose quite a bit with their clients. And my favorite all-time professor ever, his name's Dr. Michael Elliott, and he practices in Santa Barbara, and he said disclose all over the place, just be in the room. It's more important that you get the work done, that you help this person. Like, I wouldn't disclose like, oh, Kelly, I need your help, or Jarett, I can help with this, but I might, I think if I talk about my stuff, you're going to feel better, safer talking about your stuff. And like I said, why would you risk being vulnerable with me when I won't be vulnerable with you?
Yeah, no, it really does make a huge difference.
I feel like I'm going to get a lot of flack for this because it's so controversial in the psychology world.
I think people will always find something to complain about, but the reality of what you do is, you can see the fruit in the people that you work with and in the lives that are changed and impacted. So fuck them.
Yeah. And I don't feel bad saying I know that I'm really good at what I do, because everybody's good at something. Like, I suck at tennis. I'm just like worst tennis player. Nobody ever wants to be my doubles partner, but I love it. So I play tennis all the time, and like everyone's like, oh, who has to play with her? She's so cool. But so everybody's good at something, and this just happens to be my gift. And I think that what I do with this gift is how I return the favor of sobriety back to the universe. Like, the universe gave me this gift of sobriety. So how I pay back that gift and what I gift to the universe is what I do with it. And what I do with it is I have a ton of fun. I just like to have so much fun with my clients. We just laugh all the time. We say the craziest stuff. Oh my gosh.
This is true. I can attest to that. Anna just pointed out that there's a theory that you shouldn't be an addiction counselor unless you have been in addiction. And whether or not that holds true for everybody, I can say that I have personally known people in recovery that intentionally sought out a therapist who was in recovery because they didn't feel that someone who had never been there could truly understand what they were going through.
Yeah, there are two sides to that coin. One of the sides is, could you treat cancer as an oncologist if you've never had cancer?
Well, sure.
Yeah, so that's one of the sides of it. That's like if we're playing devil's advocate. The other side of it is, I do a lot of work with sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my thing, is to help. And I didn't want it to be my thing. It just fell in my lap, and I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm really devoted and passionate about it. And I've talked about different sex work, different things that have happened in my life. And I remember, I'll never forget, I was working with this girl who was kidnapped at the age of 19. She never had a boyfriend. She was held as a sex trafficking in Georgia.
Wow.
For 6 months.
Wow.
I told her this story about like this crazy thing that happened to me. I'm not going to tell the story because my kids could listen to this, but this crazy thing that happened to me. And she just looked at me and she said, I feel like you don't think I'm disgusting anymore. Mm. And I just like started crying. And I was like, I never thought you were disgusting. And she said, I guess we both have made some mistakes. And that's right there at that moment when I knew I was doing the right thing.
Absolutely. Well, and because recovery is a very different thing, so much more participatory than cancer. Like, if I have cancer, there's only so much that I can do. Obviously there are things that I can do, but there's only so much I can do. So having an oncologist who's never had cancer, I really don't care. I don't give a shit if he's ever had cancer as long as he knows how to treat it. But I think when it comes to emotions and all these things that we feel guilt and shame about and are difficult to talk about, and the traumas, and it's so hard to feel comfortable speaking about those things if you think that the person that you're telling these things to won't truly understand. And I think that's where so much of that comes from. It's that guilt and shame, and being able to overcome that and talk about the things that are causing you to self-medicate or maybe contributing to it. Being able to say those things to somebody that is inside going, yep, been there, done that, it makes a big difference.
Like, I have slept in my car, and my clients know that I've slept in my car, and they look at me in the eye, and they know that I know where they've been, and they know that I faked my graduation. And I mean, I could tell lots of other horrible stories like that. And I know that it brings them some peace.
It really does. Well, you are by far one of my absolute most favorite people in the world, and I can guarantee that you are now Anna's as well, because she's been texting me this whole time, and I'm sure you will be as people listen to this. And I hope the biggest thing that people take away from this is a sense of compassion, both for what other people are going through and what they themselves are going through. Because if we can be more compassionate towards ourselves, then I think that opens the way for healing and recovery as well.
100%. But I do want to add that I'd like to give Jarett a free hour just to do some research on his.
I think you're going to need way more than an hour.
Yeah, that's why I don't do it. Like, listen, I don't want to say that, I'm like super familiar with therapy, but I've seen every episode of Dr. Katz. I've seen every episode of The Sopranos.
Okay.
So I feel like, maybe I'm not to your level, but no, it would be an interesting hour for everybody. And, it would be one of those things where I'd be like, man, that was really cool. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And then next thing you know, you got me exercising and eating vegetables, and let's just keep it to the podcast. Let's keep it light.
Let's just slow
Come on, Doc.
Dr. D. Let's just slow your roll.
Come on, Doc. Don't, my son drew a picture of me and him, sitting at the table playing a game, and it was like a Father's Day present. It was in my office, and we sold a car to a therapist, and one of my salesmen used my office and finished up the deal, and the doctor left. He bought a few cars from us, and I walked in the office. I sat down, and we started talking about the deal, and he goes, "Hey man, he mentioned your picture." And I said, "Oh yeah, what did he mention?" He goes, "He just he mentioned how it was interesting how your son drew it from an aerial point of view. Like, look, basically your kid's fucked up, man." And we had a good laugh, and he was just kidding. But I took that picture out of my office ever since then, and I was like, you got to be careful. These things, they know things.
I think it's really not in good taste to people always say, "Are you analyzing me?" And I'm like, no, I'm really tired, and I'm not analyzing you. I'm actually shopping online, but I think it's in really bad taste to give unsolicited advice.
Yes.
Isn't it hard for you not to be that, though? Because that's who you are. Like, I'm always selling something to somebody, and I've had so many people in my personal life be like, "Whoa, hey, stop. I'm not a customer." And I'm like, well, just because I'm using yes questions on you doesn't mean. I'm just saying that it would be really cool if you did go and get ice cream, right? And yeah, stop doing that. So, isn't it difficult for you not to do that? I don't know.
Well, being a psychologist, you get to go to school for 7.5 years post. That's after your undergrad. So you get a lot of training in turning it off. I don't do it. My son, when he was 3 years old, I was saying something to him, and he said, "Mommy, don't therapy me."
Therapy.
Don't therapy me. And I was like, oh my God, he's 3 years old. He already knows that I'm trying to, he knows what's going on already.
Yeah, that's good.
It's so cute. And then one time we were sitting in the kitchen, he was probably 8 years old, and I was telling him a story about my day, and he goes, "Say more about that." And I go,
Oh
"What?"
my God.
I go, "What did you say?" And he goes, "I said, say more about that, Mom." I go, "Why did you say that?" And he goes, "That's what you always say, Mom. Say more about that." And I'm like, "Oh my God."
Yeah, see? So you have little tricks. Like, here's a trick that I learned. I'll share this with all of our listeners as well. It's the craziest thing in the world because it's a very simple phrase. But if you ever want to get information from somebody, you just say this simple word. Hey, listen, off the record, where'd you really go to get that? And for some reason, when you say off the record, people are just like, all right, I went and bought it at the other dealership from Jim, the salesman. And I'm just like, you motherfucker. Like, what? But they didn't want to give me any of the information until I asked them to tell me off the record. Off the record, people open up. It's a trick. I don't know why, but it works.
Use that.
Use that. You watch.
I like it.
I think that's the Watergate effect.
Yeah. Off the record.
Well, and I do think there's something to be said for just having a true gift for it too, because right before we started recording, Jarett said, I probably won't say a whole lot during this interview. We'll just kind of let Kelly take the reins and da-da-da. Because, he figured we're talking with a therapist. He's not going to have much to say. I think we kind of proved him wrong there.
I'm pretty good at getting people to open up. That's my game, is to find out what's going on.
I'm just horrible at shutting up.
That's good. That makes my job so easy. I love clients like you. They come in and they just talk. And I'm like, sometimes people will come in and they will talk for a full hour. And I literally, I'm not kidding you, will not say one word. And they'll get up and they'll go, "I feel so much better. Thank you for this session." And I'm like, "You're welcome." And I swear to God, did not say one word.
Wow.
I just listen to them. I just sit there and nod and listen to them. And then they get up and say, "Wow, this was great. I feel so much better. I'll see you next week." And I go, "Okay. Sounds
Nice
good."
to be heard.
Yeah, I think so many of us spent most of our lives being invalidated. When you're a kid and you say, "I'm cold," you're not cold. Put on a jacket. I'm so tired. You're not tired. Wake up, get up, sit up straight. All these invalidations. Like if I were going to come up with a formula to make somebody crazy, I would say invalidate them all the time. If they say you're tired, you're not tired. I'm cold, you're not cold. It's a warm day outside. What are you talking about? Just continue to invalidate them, and that will make them crazy. So I think the most important thing a therapist can do is validate you. Like even if you say something that they don't agree with, if you say like, I want to kill myself, I can validate that by saying, "It sounds like you're in a lot of pain." Instead of, "You don't want to kill yourself. That's not a good idea."
Wow. That's really good.
Yeah.
Let's just all sit with that for a second.
Yeah, just let that marinate to all of our listeners out there. What do you guys think of that? Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, see, this is why I don't want a free hour. You're just gonna mess my head up more, and then it's gonna take 12 years. You're gonna tap into some shit that I've done a good job at burying stuff away, right? Like it's gone. I don't know about it. I can't be having you tap into
Energy
it.
drinks on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're drowning it in energy drinks.
There's a psychologist named Sean Aker, and he says, if you come into therapy, we either hope you're depressed or you have a diagnosis. Hopefully both, because then you have to keep coming back. If you come in telling us we have one problem, we'll send you away telling you have 10, because we get you every.
Well, I think it's great that, you can sit there for an hour and just listen to somebody. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that need that. It makes me think all the time. I worked with this bitter old salesman, and the one day I literally spit coffee out because he said, I don't know what the beginning of the conversation was, but I just hear him as he turned the corner and he goes, "Yeah, you should have met my ex-wife. She had 2 mouths and 1 ear." And, to me, it was just the funniest thing. And all he ever did was complain about his ex-wife. But to hear that one, I just laughed so hard. And I thought to myself, poor Johnny, just, he probably hadn't gotten hurt in years.
Or valid. Nobody's ever said it's okay to feel that way. Even if I don't agree, it's okay. And like I was going to say, Jarett, it's such a valuable, valuable tool for your children. Like if I take anything away from this, being a parent, validate everything. Even if they're wrong, you can validate that they're experiencing it. It doesn't mean they don't have consequences. I totally, I tell my kids all the time, you have every right to get up in the middle of the night and sneak and play video games. You will suffer the consequences, but you have every right to do that.
See, this is good advice for me because I am used to minimalizing things like, oh, that's not really, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
And that hasn't gotten me very far. So maybe the validating will be a better tool.
Yeah, it's amazing when I tell people you can do that. Like people say to me, I want to kill myself, and they'll say it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then I'll say, you have every right to kill yourself. And they never say it again. Because I didn't try
to be heard.
I had a woman come in, one of my famous people, and she was in psychosis, in meth-induced psychosis. And she kept saying, I need to have I need a bodyguard. I need a bodyguard. And I was like, oh my God, this bitch doesn't need a bodyguard. Shut up and listen to me. So she kept saying on and on, I need a bodyguard. I need a bodyguard. And we could not get anything done. She couldn't stop talking about the bodyguard. So about halfway through the session, I go over to my computer and I look up a bodyguard and print it out. And I said, if you listen to me, we'll call at the end of the session. And she said, okay. And she never talked about it again.
Wow.
Because I had been invalidating her the entire session. You don't need a bodyguard. When I just said, okay, here's a paper for a bodyguard. Here's a number. Let's call them. She just never talked about it again. And we never called them.
Wow.
Funny story about her was she was married to a very famous celebrity, and she kept telling me, somebody's following me. Somebody's following me. And I was like, oh my God, she's in so much psychosis. Nobody is following you. So we go to court, and I had to go to court with her. And the ex is in court, says, well, I had somebody following her while she was in town. And I'd been telling her the whole time, no one's following you. No one's following you. You're in psychosis. Now I know better. If somebody says they're being followed, I like, that could be true.
Oh.
Isn't that funny? And he said, yeah, I had somebody follow her over. She was in rehab. And I was like, oh my God. She was great.
Well, DeAnna, thank you for spending the last hour just proving everything that I said in my introduction to be true. You are absolutely wonderful. You're brilliant. You're beautiful. You're compassionate. You're funny. And you have helped a lot of people, and you continue to do so when you don't need to. And so thank you for that. Thank you for coming on the show. And thank you for sharing all of your wisdom with us.
Absolutely. Kelly, can I just say one more thing? You know what I always tell you? It takes one to know one.
Thank you. So if people want to know more about New Method Wellness, you have a website, right? newmethodwellness.com.
On Dr. Phil, like the cameraman and Dr. Phil hates me. So if I ever get an awkward, horrible angle, he'll shoot it. If you want a good laugh, go on the New Method Wellness website and watch me on Dr. Phil.
That's awful. I don't think you have a bad angle, DeAnna, but all right.
Go watch the show. You'll be like, okay, you were right. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you for starting our year off on such a positive note.
And I really liked meeting Jarett and Anna. That was great.
They're fabulous, too. Well, thank you so much. We sure appreciate you.
Absolutely. Take care. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Well, Kelly, I don't think we could have started the new year out 2022 at Bradley's house any better than we just did. Holy shit, was that awesome.
I love her so much. And I really, really seriously been looking forward to this. And she absolutely did not disappoint. She's so fabulous. And yeah, I do think it's a great way to start the year. And I hope everybody hears, the message in there that we're all human. We're all dealing with stuff. Let's just, love each other, talk about it, be open, get through it. And I think everyone will have a better year for it.
Yeah, I mean, just the simple fact that there's somebody that, she faked her college graduation. And, when you're doing that kind of stuff, you're in rough shape. And now here she is, a doctor on the Dr. Phil show and doing all these amazing things, helping out all of these different people. It goes to show you that we can recover.
It's true. And she's changing lives, and she doesn't need to be doing it. That's the crazy part, is that she, is one of those people that does it because she wants to, and because she's good at it, and because she feels compelled to help people. And that makes me love her that much more.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I certainly look forward to having her back. And guys, we hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed recording it. You know why we're doing it, guys. We're doing it because we're raising funds to open Bradley's House. The KnowellFamilyFoundation.org is the website. That's where you can go and check out all of the information about the Knoll Family Foundation and Bradley's House. Of course, you can follow us on the Bradley's House page on Facebook, the Knoll Family Foundation everywhere on social media. And make sure that you guys look in the description of the show below, and you get the link tree that'll get you to all things Knoll Family Foundation. You guys can pick up a t-shirt, hoodie, pin, lots of cool stuff going on. Are there hoodies yet, Kelly?
There are. In fact, I just got a whole shipment of them. Haven't gotten them up on the site yet because I need to go through and just make sure we have all the right numbers and sizes and inventory before I put it on there. But yes, we have lots of hoodies now.
Excellent. And of course, the Knoll Family Foundation is going to be out at Cali Vibes. So if you guys are in Long Beach and you're coming out to check out Cali Vibes, make sure you look for the Knoll Family Foundation tent. And damn, Kelly, I'm getting excited because I know that we're on the brink of making a pretty big announcement, guys. So
we are. We have some exciting stuff coming up. I'm super stoked. I think by the next show, we'll be able to announce it. So, Jarett, as you know, we usually end the show with a song from The House That Bradley Built. My favorite album by far, obviously, because there's so many great songs on there by so many great artists. But I think with this being the new year, we should end the show with Last Ska Song by Perro Bravo, because we start every show with it, with a little tease of the song. I think it would be a nice way to end the show for the first episode of the year. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. It's one of my all-time favorite songs, and that's why it is the introduction to this show. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, Perro Bravo's The Last Ska Song, which is written pretty much about Miguel's interactions with your brother and the whole story. And fuck, I love that song. So I think that's a great idea. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you check out all of the social medias. Give us a follow wherever you're listening to this show. Like, comment, share. It means a whole lot to us. Looking forward to this awesome 2022 with all you guys and some of the amazing shows and news that the Knoll Family Foundation is going to be breaking. But until next week, I am Jarett Orr. She is Kelly Knoll. We are out of time. You don't have to go home, but it's time to leave Bradley's house.
Friends and family, we're gathered here today to say goodbye to the Ska Song. Nothing is impossible, but certain things are highly improbable. Don't think I'll meet your kind again, not in this lifetime. A believable character coming from the streets of Long Beach City, the guy that everybody wanted to be with the riffs and the rhymes. The shit was just dynamite. Then we dropped 40 ounces of freedom and we started to catch a little buzz. And it took us by surprise when they called us a ska band. My dad didn't even know what ska was. This is when the sound of the last train coming. We were all aboard for the last ska song. It's been a while man since you've been gone. Thanks for the fist, but now we're moving on and on. Kids write their songs, they got but now we're moving. With a little success, we started thinking about that island in the sun. The label tried to bill you, the drugs that tried to kill you, but the revolution had begun. This is the heavy, heavy monster sound. Shows as the next generation set to rock the nation, and my Snoop Dogg sold out Irvine Melrose. They even tried to do the band without you, cause everybody knows the name. And bands that used to keep it real are only worried about the deal, and they all seem to sound so tame. I try not to lose faith and keep thinking that something cool will come along, and then I get a phone